Claude responded, "My son-in-law asked to use my truck to haul equipment for a job on a Friday night. My son-in-law asked to use my truck to haul equipment for a job on a Friday night." I said yes. I handed him the keys off the pegboard by the garage door, the same pegboard I'd had since I built that garage myself in 1994, and I told him to fill the tank when he was done. And I went to bed early because I'd told him I had a headache, which I did. 67 years old and tired in the particular way. You get tired when you've been managing a widowhood for 3 years that nobody mentions anymore because everyone assumes you've adjusted. I was in bed by 9. The house was quiet. The window unit was running the way it always runs in July, the hum of a man who has slept alone since his wife died and needs a sound between himself and the dark. At 1:15 in the morning, I woke up. Not the air conditioner cycling off, not a sound from inside the house, something outside my bedroom window, close enough to be standing on the gravel strip between my house and the tool shed. A voice, low and certain, the voice of a man who believes the person inside the window is asleep. I lay still. The window unit kept running. I turned my head toward the glass without moving anything else. It was my son-in-law's voice. He said, "The deed's already transferred. He doesn't even know yet." I did not move. I lay in the dark with my hands flat against the sheet, and I listened to him walk back across the gravel, and I heard my truck start in the driveway, and I heard him pull away, and I lay there another full minute before I got up. I walked to the den, to the file cabinet in the corner, the one with the lamp I leave on low because I like a lit room at night, the cabinet where I keep the folder with the papers that matter, the deed to this house, the deed to the 10 acres behind it that my father cleared by hand, the paperwork that says who owns what after 67 years of a man building something out of red Georgia clay. I opened the top drawer. I opened the second drawer. I opened the bottom drawer, the deep one, where the folder lived behind the hanging files. The folder was gone. In its place was a single sheet of paper, folded once, my name written on the outside in handwriting that was not mine. I picked it up. I unfolded it. I read what was on it. I stood in my den at 1:15 in the morning in my own house, and I read what my son-in-law had left in the place where my folder used to be, and I understood, in about 30 seconds, the full shape of what had been built around me while I was busy being tired and grieving and trusting the people who mowed my lawn and drove me to my cardiology appointments and told me they were just helping out. Then I walked to the kitchen. I put the coffee on, even though it was 1 in the morning, because some nights call for coffee instead of sleep. I sat down at the table, and I started making a list. If you're new here, stick with me on this one, because it's going to matter more than you think by the time we're through. Drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from tonight. I read every one of them, and I mean that. Let's get into it. My name is Walter Ferris. I'm 67 years old, and I live outside a little town called Cedartown, Georgia, on a dirt road called Miller's Gap, in a farmhouse that my father built, board by board, in 1958, and that I inherited, free and clear, when he passed. Add my wife, Dorothy, and I raised 2 daughters in that house. Dorothy died 3 years ago this past spring, an aneurysm, no warning, gone between breakfast and lunch on an ordinary Tuesday, and since then, I've been the kind of widower who keeps the house clean because it's the only thing that still makes sense to control. I have 2 daughters. Renee is the older one, 44, married to the man whose voice I heard outside my window. His name is Trent, and they live about 20 minutes from me. Close enough that Trent has been helping out since Dorothy died in ways that started small and never really stopped. My younger daughter, June, is 39, lives 4 hours away in Chattanooga with her husband and my 2 grandkids, and she calls me every Sunday like clockwork. But she isn't around day to day the way Trent has made himself around. I want to be fair here, because fairness matters to me, and because I spent 31 years as a land surveyor, and you don't do that kind of work without learning that the truth is usually buried under a foot of assumption before you ever get to bedrock. So let me tell you how Trent got close enough to hear him say what I heard him say. After Dorothy died, Trent started coming by on Saturdays to help with things around the property, the gutters, the tractor, the fence line out past the pond. He was good at it, genuinely good, and I was grateful, because grief makes a man's hands forget how to hold a wrench the way they used to. Over about a year and a half, Trent went from coming by on Saturdays to having a key to the tool shed, to knowing where I kept the spare truck key, to sitting with me at the kitchen table some evenings when June couldn't make the drive, and I didn't want to eat alone. He drove me to 2 cardiology appointments in Rome when my truck was in the shop. He helped me sort through Dorothy's closet, which is not a small thing to ask of anybody, and he never once complained about it. I trusted him the way you trust a man who shows up, because showing up is supposed to mean something. About 8 months ago, Trent started asking questions that I now understand were not idle. He asked whether I'd ever thought about simplifying things for tax purposes. He asked whether Renee and June were both on my will the same way, or whether one of them had been given more responsibility than the other, given that Renee lived closer and did more of the actual caretaking. He asked, more than once, in a tone so casual I didn't clock it as a question at all, whether I'd ever considered putting the house and the land in Renee and Trent's name now, while I was alive, so there'd be no mess later. No probate, no lawyers, no fighting between sisters. I told him I hadn't thought much about it, which was true, and I told him Dorothy and I had always meant to split things evenly between the girls, which was also true, and I thought that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. About 6 weeks ago, Trent asked to borrow my truck on a Friday night to haul some fencing supplies for a side job he does on weekends, welding and fence work for extra money. I said yes, same as I'd said yes a dozen times before. I gave him the keys. I told him about the gas tank. I went to bed with a headache that was real, and a trust that, as it turned out, was not entirely earned. And at 1:15 in the morning, standing outside my bedroom window on the gravel strip he had walked across so many times to help me that I never once thought to wonder why he was walking across it at that hour instead of already being gone with the truck, I heard him say 5 words into his phone that took the floor out from under 67 years of believing I understood my own family. The deed's already transferred. He doesn't even know yet. I want you to sit with that sentence the way I had to sit with it, alone, at 1 in the morning, in a house my father built. Here's what I pieced together over the following 11 days, working the way I used to work a property line inch by inch, checking every marker against the last one, refusing to trust a single corner stake until I'd confirmed it against 2 others. The note left in my drawer was not from Trent. It was from a woman named Carol Vasquez, a notary and part-time paralegal who works out of a strip mall office in Rome, Georgia, and who I would later learn had processed paperwork for Trent before, on unrelated matters, small stuff, nothing that would have raised a flag. The note said, in careful, almost apologetic handwriting, "Mr. Ferris, I don't feel right about what I signed off on. Call me." I kept a copy. Below that was a phone number. I did not sleep the rest of that night. At 6 in the morning, I called June in Chattanooga, and I told her everything, and she was on the road within the hour, 4 hours of interstate that she made in 3.5. While I waited for her, I did not call Renee. I did not call Trent. I sat at my kitchen table with my list and my coffee, and I called the number on the note. Carol Vasquez answered on the second ring, sounding like a woman who had been waiting for that call and dreading it in equal measure. What she told me, over the next 20 minutes, was this. 2 months earlier, Trent had brought in a quitclaim deed for the farmhouse and the 10 acres, end quote. Along with what he told her was my notarized authorization to transfer the property into a trust in Renee's name, for estate planning purposes, since his father-in-law's health was declining. He had a signature on the authorization that looked, him, at a glance, like mine. He had a copy of my driver's license, which I later realized had gone missing from my wallet for about 4 days back in the spring, when I thought I'd simply misplaced it while getting a new one issued. What he did not have was me, in person, in front of Carol, signing anything. Carol told me she'd processed the notarization based on the documents Trent presented, following what she believed at the time was standard remote notarization procedure permitted under Georgia law for certain transactions. But somewhere in the paperwork, something had nagged at her. She said she went back and looked at the signature again after the fact, compared it to an older document I'd signed for an unrelated county matter years before, and the loop on the F and Ferris didn't sit right with her. She said she'd been losing sleep over it for 2 weeks, trying to work up the nerve to call me directly, because she was afraid of what she might be implicated in if she was wrong about her suspicion, and even more afraid of what it meant if she was right. When she heard, through a mutual contact in town, that Trent had borrowed my truck again that Friday night, she made a decision. She drove out to Miller's Gap herself, late, on the theory that if I was truly unaware, someone needed to tell me before it went further, and if I already knew, no harm done by a note in a drawer. She let herself onto the back porch through the door I never lock, walked into my den, because the desk lamp was the only light on in the house, and she assumed it was where I'd find something, and left the note in the one place she guessed. A man like me would keep his important papers the same drawer, as it happened, where the actual folder should have been. Except, the actual folder was not there. Because 2 days before that, Trent had come by, while I was at my Wednesday physical therapy appointment, a standing weekly commitment he knew about, because he was often the one who drove me, and he had, using a key I did not know he had a copy of, gone into my den and removed the original deed and the 20-year-old will Dorothy and I had drawn up together, the one that split everything evenly between Renee and June. My theory, which the sheriff's investigator later confirmed through phone records and a receipt from a shipping store in Rome, is that Trent needed the original deed to complete the transfer at the county clerk's office, and he needed the original will gone so that if anyone ever asked questions, there would be no clean paper trail of what the split was originally supposed to be, just his version of what Walter always wanted. The 5 words I heard through the window, "The deed's already transferred, he doesn't even know yet," were Trent, on the phone, telling Renee it was done. I need to be careful here, because this is the part of the story where I have gone back and forth more times than I can count, and I owe you the honest version, rather than the satisfying one. I do not believe, to this day, that Renee knew the full extent of what Trent had done. I believe because of what happened over the following week, and because I have known my daughter for 44 years, and I trust my own read of her more than I trust anything else in this, that Trent told her a version of events that sounded reasonable to a tired, grieving daughter who had been doing the lion's share of caretaking and had, understandably, begun to feel that fairness and equal division didn't fully account for who actually showed up. I believe Trent told her something like, "Your dad's been talking about simplifying things. He wants to avoid probate. I'm just helping get the paperwork moving before something happens to him." I believe she signed something herself, somewhere in that process, believing it was a formality. I do not believe she understood that the will had been removed, that her father's original signature had been forged or lifted onto a document he never saw, or that a stranger's ID theft had been used to make it look clean. When June arrived at my house that Saturday afternoon, dust still on her tires from the highway, she did not ask a single question before she hugged me. She stood in my kitchen in her work clothes because she hadn't stopped to change, and she said, "Dad, tell me everything, from the beginning, slow," and I did. And she listened the way her mother used to listen, without interrupting, taking notes on the back of an envelope because neither of us could find a notepad in the moment that mattered. We called Carol back together, on speaker, so June could hear it directly rather than secondhand. We called a lawyer in Rome that same afternoon, a woman named Patricia Ahn who has handled property and estate matters in that county for over 20 years, and who told me within the first 10 minutes of our call that what I was describing, if it held up, was not a family disagreement. It was elder financial exploitation and quite possibly forgery and identity theft, and that Georgia takes all 3 seriously, especially the identity theft piece. Given the missing driver's license, Patricia moved fast. Within 48 hours, she had filed to place a hold on the deed transfer at the county clerk's office, arguing fraud, and had gotten a preliminary word from the clerk that the transfer, while recorded, had not yet been fully finalized in a way that couldn't be unwound, a detail that made me sit down hard at my own kitchen table when June told me, because I understood for the first time that there was still a chance to stop the floor from actually giving way beneath me. Here is the part of the story I know a lot of you are waiting for, because I've watched enough of these stories myself to know what you're hoping happens next, and I'm not going to give you a clean revenge scene, because that is not what happened, and I promised you the honest version. 4 days after June arrived, we asked Renee to come to the house. Not Trent. Renee. She came alone, which told me something before she'd even said a word. She sat at the kitchen table where her mother used to sit, and I laid it out for her the way Patricia had coached me to plainly, without accusation in my voice, even though there was plenty of it in my chest. The deed, the notary, the missing will, the driver's license, the 5 words I'd heard through the window. I watched my daughter's face go through something I will not forget for the rest of my life. It was not the face of a woman hearing a confirmation of something she already knew. It was the face of a woman watching a floor open up under her own feet, same as mine had 4 nights before. She put her hands over her mouth. She said, "Dad, I signed something. He told me it was for the trust. He said you'd already agreed to it. He said you wanted it done quietly so it wouldn't upset June." And then she stopped, because she heard herself say it out loud. Ah, and she understood, the way I had understood, at 1 in the morning at my file cabinet, the shape of what had actually been built around her. She left my house that afternoon and went home and, according to what she told June 2 days later, had the worst argument of her 20-year marriage. She confronted Trent with everything I'd told her. He told her I was confused, that I'd agreed to everything and was backtracking out of guilt or dementia, which I want you to sit with the cruelty of that particular lie for a second. A man trying to convince my own daughter that her father was losing his mind, rather than admit what he'd done. Renee did not believe him. She told him she was calling Patricia on herself the next morning to give a full statement, and that if what I'd described was true, she would not protect him from it, husband or not. She kept her word. She gave a sworn statement 3 days later that corroborated the timeline when Trent had asked her to sign paperwork, what he'd told her it was for, and, critically, that she had never once been present for or witnessed any conversation where I supposedly agreed to transfer the property. That statement, combined with Carol's cooperation and the phone records Patricia subpoenaed, was enough for the district attorney's office to open a formal investigation into Trent for forgery and attempted identity theft. Renee moved out of their house that same week and is currently staying with June in Chattanooga while the investigation and, I assume, the divorce move forward on separate but related tracks. The deed transfer was formally voided by the county clerk once the fraud was established, 12 days after that Friday night. My original will cannot be recovered, it's gone, likely destroyed, but Patricia drew up a new one within the same week, and this time I did something I probably should have done years ago. I sat both my daughters down together, on a video call since Renee was in Chattanooga by then, and I told them exactly what the new will says, out loud, in front of each other, so that there is no version of this story anyone can tell later, except the one where both of my daughters heard it directly from me. The house and the land are split evenly, same as Dorothy and I always intended, the same as the will that got stolen out of my drawer always said. Some things don't need reinventing. They just need protecting. I think about that night more than I probably should. I think about the version of it where I don't wake up at 1:15 in the morning, where the window unit is just a little louder, or my sleep is just a little deeper, and Trent's 5 words go unheard, and the deed finishes transferring quietly, and I find out 6 months later, or a year later, or never at all, that the 10 acres my father cleared by hand in 1958 belongs to somebody who married into this family and decided that showing up on Saturdays entitled him to more than what was freely and lovingly meant to be shared. I think about how close that version came to being the real one. I also think about Carol Vasquez, a woman I had never met before that week, who could have said nothing, who could have told herself it wasn't her business, who instead lost 2 weeks of sleep over the loop on a signature, and drove out to a stranger's farmhouse at night to leave a note in a drawer because some quiet, decent instinct in her would not let her look away. I called her a week later, after everything had settled into its legal channels, just to say thank you in person. She cried a little on her side of the phone. She said she almost didn't come that night. I told her I was glad, more glad than I know how to put into words, that almost wasn't what she chose. And I think about Renee, because this is the part of the story that matters most to me. More than the deed, more than the investigation, more than whatever happens to Trent in a courtroom, eventually. My daughter was lied to by a man she trusted enough to marry, and when the truth was put in front of her, plainly, without her father softening it to protect her feelings, she did not protect the lie. She chose the truth over her marriage, and she chose her father over her husband. And she did it in the space of one afternoon at a kitchen table, and I do not think there is a version of getting even that matters to me, even 1/10 as much as that choice mattered. I am 67 years old. I am a retired land surveyor, a widower, a father of 2 daughters, who I now understand, more clearly than I did a month ago, exactly where each of them stands, and exactly what each of them is made of. The house on Miller's Gap is quiet again most nights, except that June comes out most weekends now, and Renee is planning to move into the old tenant house on the back of the property once the divorce is final, close enough that I am, for the first time in 3 years, not entirely alone out here, not because a man tried to take something from me, but because in trying, he showed me exactly who was standing where when the ground shook. Dorothy's rose bushes are still along the east side of the porch. I look at them every morning with my coffee. They don't know what happened in this house in the past few weeks. They're just doing what she planted them to do, coming back every spring, blooming without asking permission from anybody, being exactly what they were meant to be. I'm trying to do the same. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what you would have done differently in my position, and tell me where you're watching from tonight, because I read every single one. Hit that like button before you go. And if there's someone in your life who has been getting a little too close to your file cabinet, a little too curious about your paperwork, a little too helpful in ways that never quite add up, trust what you're noticing. Check your drawers. Call your daughter. F, 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 F. The tract is inches does the daughter are in future of the daughter of the daughter are in future and the daughter of 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 the daughter of. And ask yourself who's really been standing outside your window all this time. Claude responded. What I keep coming back to is how quiet Carol's courage was. No badge, no reward, just a woman who couldn't sleep until she did the right thing. What I keep coming back to is how quiet Carol's courage was. No badge, no reward, just a woman who couldn't sleep until she did the right thing. That's the part worth keeping, paying attention to the small nagging feeling, checking on the people we love before it's too late, and trusting that showing up honestly always outlasts showing up for gain. Family isn't who claims you, it's who tells you the truth. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI for entertainment purposes, while hoping to share a genuine, positive life lesson with you.